So I'd like to welcome everybody to the 5,551st meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago. Rotary One is now in session. We always start our meeting with a thought of the day. So I'd like to introduce to you the CEO of Loquacious Culinary Events, the woman who feeds Chicago, our board member, Job One Chair, and President Designee of the Rotary Club of Chicago, Miss Alita Williams. Alita, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this time. As we reflect on the legacy of Martin Luther King, it made me think of my legacy. My grandmother's brother was Samuel Woodrow Williams, and he is pictured here in this picture with Martin Luther King and John Lewis. And he was the department head at Morehouse College in 1963, Department of Religion. And he was a mentor and teacher to Martin Luther King and a civil rights activist in Atlanta. Being influenced by the Montgomery bus boycott in 1959, he and Reverend John Porter filed a suit against the segregated Atlanta trolley system and won. He always stressed that the Black community is in a sophisticated evasion, cloaked in the fragile robe of good faith with our country. And he always warned against people doing a moral double take that is eroding away at the moral integrity of the nation. With that being said, one thing he always asked of everyone that I will leave you to think of today is, what is your responsibility for justice? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alita. I think that's a very poignant thought for the day, and thanks for sharing that very interesting historical connection with your family and Dr. King. Before we get to our speaker today, I wanted to make one general announcement. I'd like to thank all of our Easy Pay members who have continued to stick with us over this challenging year. I know that the Easy Pay payment system was designed to include lunches, and obviously those have not been part of our meetings for some time, but those funds do help to support the operations of the club, and we couldn't have continued that without you. So we want to thank you for siding with us. And so in order to sort of honor and elevate that commitment to the club, the board of the Rotary Club of Chicago has made some changes to the Easy Pay membership to try to reflect that and reflect the nature of the current pandemic. We have changed the name to something a little bit more flashy. It is now called Golden Wheel Membership. And so what this now does, in addition to including lunches, once those return, we also want to make sure that we honor what you're doing for us through Paul Harris points, giving 50 Paul Harris points per month, 50 Chess Perry points per month. Those go towards your status as a Paul Harris Fellow and a Chess Perry Fellow. We also will include the list of all of the current Golden Wheel members on our website and in our Gyrator newsletter as well to honor you and make sure that you know that we appreciate what you're doing. And then finally, we'll make sure to highlight each of you individually throughout the year in the Gyrator, talking about your own background, your professional background, your work, your company, whatever, to make sure that you get the recognition you deserve. We will also be donating funds in excess of the base dues, which is basically $83 beyond the base dues for the Golden Wheel membership, to the foundation of the Rotary Club of Chicago, in order to make sure that those funds are going to be sort of squirreled away for the future. Once we do get back to in-person meetings, those will be squirreled away for now so that they can come back and support future projects. for the Rotary Club of Chicago. There'll be more about that in the gyrator, so do take a look at the newsletter. Just a reminder to keep yourselves on mute during the presentation today. If you have any questions during Dr. Franklin's presentation, please type them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to get to them as we go through. Dr. Robert Franklin is the speaker we need to hear this week. We need to hear him because this week we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We need to hear him because of the political turmoil this nation is facing these days. Dr. Robert Michael Franklin Jr. is President Emeritus of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, having served as president there from 2007 to 2012. Robert is currently a senior advisor to the president of Emory University and is the James T. and Bertha R. Laney Professor in Moral Leadership at Emory. Previously, he was the director of the Interfaith Religion Department at Chautauqua Institution and a visiting scholar at Stanford. He is also a presidential fellow for the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership at Morehouse. Dr. Franklin was the Presidential Distinguished Professor of Social Ethics at Emory University, where he provided leadership for a university-wide initiative titled Confronting the Human Condition and the Human Experience. And he was a senior fellow at the Center for the Study of Law and Religion at the law school. When he's not busy with all of that, he provides commentary for NPR's All Things Considered and weekly commentary for Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasting Television. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Morehouse in 1975 with a degree in political science and religion and earned his Master's of Divinity at Harvard Divinity School. He also recently ran to serve the remainder of Congressman Lewis's seat in Georgia's 5th District. I'd also like to point out he is the brother of my uncle, Dave Franklin, who is on the call with us today and kindly helped to arrange Robert coming to speak to us today. Robert, I'm so thrilled you could join us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you a great deal, Eric, President Eric. What a pleasure it is to join this distinguished club. I've been looking forward to this for some time. As President Eric noted earlier, I am a proud member of the Atlanta Downtown Rotary Club. And so I feel right at home and delighted to see so many of you. I see a few familiar names. And of course, with some family and friends here, dear colleagues and conversation partners of a lifetime. But Eric, I so appreciate your leadership, your spirit, and your presence in the larger Metro Chicago, Illinois community. You are a terrific ambassador for Rotary, and so it's a real pleasure. Thank you. I must say that my heart was warmed by Alida Williams's wonderful reflection and the words that she shared from the man that she knew as the Reverend Dr. Samuel Woodrow Williams, a man that we all at Morehouse College affectionately refer to as Dr. Sam. What an extraordinary teacher he was. He was something of a Pied Piper. I bet all of you can think of one or two teachers in your high school or college experience or grad school where, you know, everybody wanted to be around that teacher, even after class, because there was always so much wisdom and these extraordinary anecdotes. And so that was Sam Williams in my life. I never took a class with Sam, but I was often in his presence, and he came to Morehouse for our, what we used to call chapel twice a week, but later came to be known as assembly. Well, what an extraordinary time for us to gather in this season where we have honored and invoked the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I'll bet there are many on this call who have memories of the King presence and legacy in Metro Chicago. And we can talk about that. But, you know, yesterday, King's holiday as a national, international kind of moral checkpoint. That's the way I like to talk about the King holiday, as a moral checkpoint for the nation and for all of our communities, as we ask ourselves the question, in light of his vision of a just and inclusive community, how are we doing now? How are we doing today? How have things evolved or changed in the past 12 months? And most importantly, where do we go from here in the next 6 months or 12 months? And what role can you play in advancing King's notion that we should move toward community building rather than allowing greater anarchy and chaos to reign? So my opening slide here you see is the title of Dr. King's book, completed in 1967 and published in 1968. And if you haven't read it, that's worth having in your library or Googling it. But particularly, I call attention to the final chapter, those 28 pages in this book, Where Do We Go From Here? And that chapter is titled The World House. And it's a wonderful image as you talk about sister city connections to Rotary clubs in Sydney, a magnificent city, by the way. My wife and I were there a few years ago. But King really had this global vision of community in the largest possible sense. So, and then of course, tomorrow, inauguration. This is Inauguration Eve. And we will look forward to the peaceful transition of presidential power. So these are interesting times, but they're complicated times. Recall George Orwell, the great novelist's observation that we have now sunk to such depths that the first duty of intelligent people is to restate the obvious. So this is a time for restating the obvious, reaffirming our fundamental or first principles and values as Rotarians, as Americans, indeed members of the global community. We'll go to the next slide. I am, as a former college president, recovering president, and as one who teaches courses on ethics and leadership or moral leadership, I've just published a book that I think my final slide will highlight. I note that leaders, and given the most generic definition of leadership, leaders are people who mobilize people and resources to achieve goals. I mean, at the most fundamental, basic level, all of you who are managers, who run companies, you're constantly looking for leaders in your employee roster, because you know those are the folks who are going to help drive innovation, drive efficiency, drive consumer and marketing success, and say, who are the leaders? And leaders, I think, are people who know how to mobilize people and resources in order to achieve certain goals. But I'm adding to our conversation today, in light of this moment in history, moral leadership. Moral leaders invite people to become better, truer, grander versions of themselves. And then leaders, I borrow this wonderful insight from Ron Heifetz of the Harvard Kennedy School, that leaders must have a stomach for failure, for risking big things. And he says roughly, 39% of the big dreams that leaders project and cast work out the way they had hoped. So that's a significant failure rate. And he says, but that's what makes them real leaders. They're willing to try. And he said, they also have to be prepared to make mid-course corrections. I bet that's something all of you have had to consider as we moved. I was just thinking about this, a few years ago through the recession and now through COVID, and trying to imagine forward, what will my company, your work, our community look like in post-COVID arena. I also appreciate the wonderful quote by Oscar Wilde that every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So even as we focus on leaders who have faced challenges in their lives, I think Oscar Wilde's wisdom offers a second chance. The next slide. Americans have thought about and celebrated great leadership from the beginning. This was a 20th century monument. You all recognize it. I wish I could ask by show of hands, how many of you been to Mount Rushmore there in South Dakota? But the extraordinary decision to create this this was a period in American public architecture and art known as the colossal or colossalism school. And in part inspired by ancient monuments. Think about, some of you been to Egypt, for instance, and the extraordinary monuments there, pyramids, what have you. And then the French kind of picked it up and popularized, so the Eiffel Tower and many of the colossal. Well, some of the leaders in America were concerned that America didn't have enough. Even, of course, the Statue of Liberty was a French gift, right? So the French were on to take your most precious values and project them outward in colossal form. And so the idea in the early 1900s to create this extraordinary monument that would give people, it's interesting, give people a reason to drive west. This is a time when the automobile is becoming a mass consumer product. People are driving, roads are developing, but most people would stop at Chicago. I smiled when I read that as a Chicagoan. And why would someone drive beyond Chicago, further west? And Mount Rushmore was designed to be part of a response to that, a tourist attraction. And of course, everyone here can name those four presidents. Next slide. In the book, although I teach moral leadership, I pay quite a bit of attention to business leaders as societal leaders. And I opened the third chapter of my book because I talk not only about how individuals like Dr. King, Dolores Huerta, or Cesar Chavez, there are many, leaders, Abraham Lincoln and others, that people like David Brooks and Dolores Kearns Goodwin write about, especially presidential leadership. I think we also ought to give more attention to those who run companies. And here Larry Fink of BlackRock offers in his annual letters to CEOs, he says something interesting. Unnerved by fundamental economic changes and the failure of government to provide lasting solutions, society is increasingly looking to companies, both public and private, to address pressing social and economic issues. This must begin with a clear embodiment of your company's purpose in your business model and corporate strategy. Stakeholders are pushing companies to wade into sensitive social and political issues, especially as they see governments failing to do so effectively. As CEOs, we don't always get it right, back to Heifetz's point, a stomach for failure. And what is appropriate for one company may not be for another. One thing, however, is certain: the world needs your leadership. I hope we can reflect on that during our Q&A. I mean, do you agree with Fink or not? And how much of that kind of risk-taking are you engaged in? And given Dr. King's question at the beginning, where do we go from here, chaos or community? What might you do in the next 6 months that you've never tried before, but society's begging for your leadership, our leadership, some leadership now? Next. This is a report I simply want to highlight because I've been talking and writing quite a bit about it. David Brooks wrote a terrific op-ed for New York Times some months ago about the hidden tribes, a study of America's polarized landscape. And I've just written another piece that will be published in CNN's digital platform. So keep an eye out for that coming, I think, this week. But it's from the nonprofit group More in Common. We Are More in Common is their full name. So let's go on to the next. One of my favorite slide in this report, and they highlight that 77% of Americans believe our differences are not so great that we cannot come together. What's interesting, and I don't know how accessible and readable this and legible this chart is, but on the far left a purple color on my sort of, I guess, violet color. Progressive activists, you say roughly 8%, and they did mass polling, 8,000 people, along with interviews with social scientists and a lot of data, crunched it, put it together. And then on the far right, you'll see the so-called, and that's purple, devoted conservatives, about 6% of the population, traditional conservatives, about 19%. And ultimately, they argue that people on the far, what they call the wings, may never really have a conversation, may never work together, may never reconcile. But he says, look at these other groups in the center, as it were, clustering toward. So he said, that's the 77%. That's the supermajority. These are people who do not want to hate each other. And that gives us some grounds for hope and possibility for moving forward. Next slide. I just include a picture of this elegant leader, Robert E. Lee. I certainly disagree with and oppose so much of what he fought for and led in the Confederacy. But I also read his biography. I've tried to pay attention to leaders who exhibited certain qualities. And you'll see it in the next slide where he offers an observation as they were building, dedicating Gettysburg. You know, this battlefield, his army lost there, and they wanted to sort of highlight through a series of monuments to Confederate soldiers as well as Union soldiers. Next slide. And Robert E. Lee said he would not attend that ceremony. And regarding Gettysburg, he said, and this was a retired General Robert E. Lee, West Point graduate, I think it wiser not to keep open the sores of war, but to follow the example of those nations who endeavored to obliterate the marks of civil strife, to commit to oblivion the feelings engendered. So he believed that the countries that erased those visible signs of war and humiliation tended to recover from conflict quicker. And he was worried that by keeping those symbols alive, it would also help to keep the division alive. I know there's a lot of spectrum of opinion on these issues of monuments. I have a few pages in the book on monuments and how every community needs to deliberate and work through their feelings and judgments about what you capture and memorialize. Next slide. And then, of course, there's this extraordinary gentleman from Illinois, of course, originally from Kentucky, but he made his reputation as that extraordinary political, moral voice in Springfield, Illinois, and then for the nation. Next slide. Recall, and I hope that we may hear from the president-elect tomorrow some language, something like this. We are not enemies, Lincoln wrote and said in his first inaugural address. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. I wanted to read that because I know a couple of you are in motion and driving and may not be able to read the screen. Just want you to hear the poetry of Lincoln's wisdom for bringing the nation together. Next slide. As we move toward wrapping up, I just wanted to add this wonderful quote by Reinhold Niebuhr. Niebuhr may be a name you don't know, but he was a pastor, a Midwestern pastor, and later served in Detroit and pastored a small Lutheran church there in the neighborhood of the Ford Motor Company. He was concerned about the impact of capitalism and big companies on the lives of local people, but he offered this wisdom. And so many U.S. presidents have looked to Niebuhr, from Jimmy Carter and Obama to George Bush. Nothing that's worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. And nothing that is true or good or beautiful makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. And nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we must be saved by love. And that final line, and the final form of love is forgiveness. Next slide. Alexis de Tocqueville was a 19th century observer, again, a Frenchman and a friend of America. He had made the following observation about American exceptionalism, and I'll wrap up here. Next slide. That the greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than any other nation, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. And I always ask my students, and I pose to you now, do you believe this is still true, that our greatness lies in our ability to repair our faults? Is that still in American DNA, or has it eroded? Next slide. This is just a little almost humorous note. Some of you recall in the wonderful play Shakespeare in Love, there was this traveling band of actors, and Ned Allen, who was the kind of star of the show, would show up, as he did this day at the Rose Theater with Shakespeare. He knew Shakespeare was going to be working on something incredible. And he'd just walk in without greetings and announce, what is the play and what is my part? That's the question I want to leave with you today. What is the play? What might be your role in repairing our frayed social fabric and refreshing our social contract? Do we need to tell, according to social scientists, new and better stories of who we are as we, the people? And then I think the final slide here is simply highlighting the work I've been doing. I've captured most of what I've said today in this slender volume titled Moral Leadership, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. The Rotary Club of Chicago is one of the extraordinary, famous clubs in the international community, and I'm just deeply honored and so grateful for President Eric's leadership and your presence. So I'm available if you have a couple of minutes. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Franklin. That was really passionate and I think really heartening to hear everything you had to say. I think we need that kind of perspective right now. And trust me, the honor is ours to have you here with us today. We do have time for questions, and there's a couple that have come in on the chat box. So I'm going to read those off here. Our past president, Marshall Schmidt, says that in his autobiography, Bakari Sellers discusses at length what it meant to him to be a Morehouse man. What does it mean to you, Dr. Franklin?
Well, thank you so much for invoking that. It's interesting. During my candidacy to complete John Lewis's term, I was on a panel with Bakari, and we compared notes about that experience. And one of the things he said to me is, Dr. Franklin, I really appreciate the way you tried to summarize or encapsulate the Morehouse experience. All of our schools have their own distinctive genius, right? But the way in which I tried to talk about and capture what Morehouse does for young people, and in this case, it's a single gender college, Morehouse men, right, literally across the street is a women's college, Spelman College. There are over 80 all women's colleges in America today, but only 4 all male colleges remain. So that's another bit of trivia you can test with your friends. But I captured it in terms of 5 statements, 5 wells, as I said. What's so important and it's special to me was that Morehouse would prepare us to be well-read, well-spoken, well-traveled, well-dressed, and well-balanced. And the 5 wells of the Morehouse mystique, I think, are what keep that college relevant and important at a time when there's considerable worry about the next generation of leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. I might build on that with a question of my own, kind of thinking about the role of a college like Morehouse, maybe providing a little bit of background for folks that because we tend to have an international crowd that may not be familiar with Morehouse in terms of why a college like this was founded in the first place and the role it served back in the 19th century, and maybe how that has evolved and what is its importance and significance in America today?
Yeah, so important. Huge question. I'll try to limit it to just a few sentences and note that 2 years after the end of the Civil War, so at the war of 1861, 1865, in 1867, 2 years later, as a newly freed Black population, African-American population, in the South, roughly 4 million African Americans had been enslaved, now suddenly free. And in the North, white churches of various denominations, as well as temples and synagogues, began to deliberate about how best to help those who were formerly enslaved to get on their feet, to become true freedmen and women. And so education and jobs and economic opportunities became the solution. Morehouse was one of a number of schools that came to be known as HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Today, there are about 105 of them. Most are in the South, and no surprise, since it was the focus of of slavery. And so Morehouse's focus was preparing ministers and educators, for the most part, who would help train the next generation of freedmen and give real meaning to their freedom and liberation. Again, today those schools are doing well, but facing enormous challenges in this COVID environment. We fear many will not survive. But that continues to be a mission at the heart of all 105, preparing thoughtful leaders for public service and for uplifting their communities.
So another question that I have, and again, I encourage folks to put questions in the chat box as well. Since you mentioned, and I also mentioned in the introduction, your run for the 5th congressional seat, which you came very close to. I was following along at home and rooting for you all the way. But I'm curious. What sort of lessons did you draw from that experience? Is there anything you can share with us? Because I think that's a fascinating experience that most of us don't get to participate in. So I'd be really curious to hear your own words of wisdom on that.
Yeah, thank you. I was, I'd say the most significant, if there was a single kind of elevator speech or response to that great question, was the hunger and responsiveness of people to the promise and offer of moral leadership. Again, back to my definition, and I capture it in the book, moral leaders are people who invite us to become better, truer versions of ourselves, principally through integrity and courage and imagination, empathy and wisdom. So there are certain traits or virtues, as Aristotle would call, but in addition, there are certain practices, things they do. They confer with everyone. They ask when they sit at the table, is everyone who should be here seated here? And if not, how can we make this table more inclusive? They are also generous. Look at what Robert E. Lee was doing after the war. And I hope that, the next administration will display a kind of a restraint about spiking the ball when you score a touchdown, as it were. When you win, you are magnanimous in victory, just as Mr. Lee, General Lee, sought to be dignified in defeat. And I think we've lost some of these virtues. People responded. I was thrilled to see. I mean, as you say, we did come in a close second. And this was part of the message I wanted to take to Capitol Hill during these troubled times. The need to remember some of these leaders who have embodied the best of us, from the Lincolns and the Franklin Roosevelts, the John Kennedy, his self-deprecation, the importance of humor, Reverend Joseph Lowry, another civil rights legend who passed away last year, and his commitment to a kind of the use of humor in public life. He talked about, even when he confronted the segregationist police officers in the South marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He would make jokes, get these people, laughing. And he said he felt there was just this glimmer of identification, common ground through laughter. So things like that were, I think, important to highlight. Certainly what I saw happening on the trail. And I found that people would respond to certain compelling moral messages, like forgiving the other, like this quote from Niebuhr, and the need for patience with our neighbors, the need to read and learn more about our neighbors and friends. So things like that were really quite heartening to me. And so I have a certain hopefulness after this congressional run than I had beforehand. We're going to be okay, as Kendrick Lamar would say, we're going to be all right.
Well, that is good to hear, and I think it's a message that we're all hoping to hear, and so certainly from somebody more sort of on the inside of what's going on as yourself, it's good to hear that. A question more directed to some of the challenges that we're facing here. And I know it's a hot question, but what are your thoughts on the racial divide in the country, specifically in light of a lot of the things that have obviously been going on over the course of the last year?
Yeah, one of the things I'm saying, and I hope you all will see it when it appears in CNN's digital space and perhaps in other places. I talk about the importance of leaning into those difficult conversations, but approaching them with an open mind, with a spirit of the possibility for achieving understanding, mutual understanding and common ground, the importance of mutual respect. I urge people who enter these difficult debates or dialogues to say something positive about your opponent before you dive into the debate. I think that would go a long way. Say something funny about yourself, the role of self-deprecating humor that Joseph Lowery and President John F. Kennedy utilized. In other words, you can bring a lot of self-righteous, almost vanity to the correctness of your position and want to sort of beat others down with it. But if the point is to achieve a deep listening that might lead to empathy, other communication habits and tactics are important. Go back and read Aristotle on rhetoric. There are certain practices that can prepare people to listen to you in a better, more effective way. And I think we do need to dig out our Aristotle on rhetoric and the way he talks about talking about your story, yourself, your failures and shortcomings immediately creates a kind of bond of empathy, because we've all had failures. So things like that. And I think that we have to be honest, though, once we do begin the debate. Let's talk about American history. Let's talk about slavery and racism and how it has evolved, how it manifests itself today. That way, we can begin to get at these open sores and wounds to heal them. And fortunately, and certainly, Chicago and Los Angeles, New York, we've had some incredible leaders, interracial, interfaith, and some with no faith. So there have been powerful humanists and atheists involved in this movement, from Bayard Rustin to W.B. Du Bois, who started as a Christian, became a humanist and something of an agnostic. So there's room here for everyone to engage. We don't have to worship together or worship anything or anyone, but we can lean into our common plight as humans, trying to make the best of it. What the first century philosopher Philo said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great struggle. And it's that generosity of the human spirit that I'm calling attention to that can help us as we deal with insurrection 2 weeks ago and its aftermath. It's still here, it's still with us. We don't know what will happen tomorrow. So maybe you want to go back and Google that last speech of Martin Luther King's, April 3rd, 1967. Recall 1968. Recall what he said in that final paragraph of I've been to the mountaintop. It begins with these words, "We've got some difficult days ahead." But look at the end of that same paragraph. That's where he starts, naming, framing in honesty. We've got some difficult days ahead, but I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen hope. I've seen a better future. And he talks about the glory, the coming glory of the Lord, as he quotes the great battle hymn of the Republic. So that for me, again, is a matter of hope. Honesty about where we are now, hopefulness about tomorrow.
Well, Dr. Franklin, I think that is a perfect way to end our conversation today. I think we want to end on a high note like that. And thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us, for sharing all of your insights with us. I would also like to point out, as somebody mentioned in the chat box here, and by the way, we have several Morehouse grads on the call with us today. But as Marshall Schmidt pointed out, a graduate of an HBCU will be inaugurated as our vice president tomorrow. Indeed. As well.
Thank you.
So as a very small token of our appreciation for you coming to speak to us today, we have a gift from a local community-based organization that we give to all of our speakers. And as with everything we do at Rotary, we want to affect lasting change here in Chicago. So the proceeds from these candles support an organization called Bright Endeavors. And their mission is to empower young moms by providing transitional jobs and professional skills training. And so this not only helps those young moms, of course, but it also supports their kids and ultimately the community. So we will have one of those in the mail to you shortly.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And as we go on to the rest of our meeting, you are obviously welcome to hang out with us as long as you like. And again, I hope everybody gives a nice virtual round of applause for our speaker today, Dr. Robert Franklin.
A special shout out to the Morehouse and HBCU grad and to my brothers, David and Kwame. Thank you all for being with me today.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I think this is a good time for us to jump into our introduction of guests, as we normally do, because we do have a lot of guests with us today. So since we have many guests, I'd like to ask you to just very briefly state your name, what you do, and if you are a Rotarian, state which Rotary Club you are visiting from today. And I'm just going to run through the list of participants as it is listed on my screen. The first guest on my screen listed here is our very own Assistant Governor from Maywood Proviso, Mr. Talay Thompson. Talay, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. This program was just absolutely fantastic. You guys are just blowing me away with the different and wonderful individuals that you are bringing on a part of your programming. Dr. Franklin, thank you so much for taking out the time to be with this club. I am one of the assistant district governors here in the district. I'm a man of Morehouse, non-graduate of our very distinguished institution, sir. I look forward to speaking with you a little bit later on, if that's okay with you. And if Eric can pass on your email address, I look forward to speaking with you. I just want to say that you are representing everything that it means to be a Morehouse man, a man of Morehouse, an individual who walked through those walls and to embody what it is that Dr. King stood for. And I want to say that it is a pleasure, sir, to be on the call with you today. And thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you, Talay, and it's always good to see you. I'm glad you could join today. And yes, I will connect you with Dr. Franklin after the meeting.
Thank you.
Sure. Our next guest here is Bill Blue from Lakeview Rotary. Bill, could you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Thank you so very, very much, Eric. Always glad to be with you folks. And I do appreciate the speakers that you bring in. And that's one of my objectives. I would love to have some speakers at our Rotary Club, too, that other people, this COVID has given us some unique opportunities with Zoom. So thank you very, very much, Eric. Yes, I'm president-elect of the Lakeview Rotary Club and looking forward to a year of service coming up. So thank you very much.
Always good to see you, Bill.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Alexander Coleman. Alexander, would you like to introduce yourself? You may be on mute, Alexander. Well, we may need to come back to Alexander. Let's move on to Armanda Killingham. Armanda, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Armanda Killingham, and I am a member of Maywood Proviso Rotary Club, and I am a technologist by trade. And I'm happy to be here. Great presentation, and thank you for allowing everyone to take part as well.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to have you on, and keep joining with that beautiful picture in the background. We want to keep seeing that every week. Our next guest is Bryant Wallace. Bryant, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Eric. I am Bryant Wallace. I am a member of the Evanston Lighthouse Rotary in Evanston, and to hear this speaker today has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm an entrepreneur. I own an IT company in cybersecurity, and always looking for ways to find more entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs that have not been able to participate, but finding ways that everybody gets a chance to participate on an equal level playing field. So listening to you talk about leadership, Mr. Robert Franklin, phenomenal. And I think I'll be picking up one of your copies of your book. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Brian, for being on with us today. I see David Franklin. David, you're next. Unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Yes, this is David Franklin, and I've really enjoyed this incredible presentation. Appreciate the Rotarians all across the world. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all the next time.
Very good, David. I hope to see you every week.
Right.
Very good. Good to see you. The next guest on my list is Hal Muller from Madison, New Jersey. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Hal Muller, a member of the Madison, New Jersey Rotary Club. I'm also the AG in District 7475. I really like the presentations that you make, and we'll come back next time that I have time to see your speakers. They're very good. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, Hal. Always happy to hear that, and hope to see you again sometime soon. Our next guest is Irv and Ruth. Irv, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm past District Governor Irv Kaplan, and this is my Rotarian wife, Ruth Kaplan.
Hi there.
My passion for Rotary has evolved to the recording and preservation of Rotary history. So I serve as chairman of the Rotary Global History Fellowship, and the guy behind me, Ruth and I look after the gravesite, the resting place of our founder, Paul Harris. And we feel like we've known Paul since 1905 until today. The speaker today was inspiring and just great. I'm a West Sider from Chicago, and I have a lot of reason to appreciate all the progress I see of my fellow Rotarians and fellow Americans.
Thank you so much, Irv, and always glad to see you guys, and thanks for all that you do for Rotary. Our next person I'd like to introduce himself. He's not technically a guest. He's a member of our club, but he is re-emerging in the world of Rotary One. So I wanted him to just get a chance to give a quick shout out. Jim Buick, would you like to just say hi to the group?
Hi to the group. I'm Jim Buick from the Roscoe Company. Been a Rotarian since 1982. My dad brought me into the club Don Buick. And today is one of the reasons that I'm a Rotarian, because of being introduced to amazing speakers like Robert Franklin, and just hearing a number of different perspectives and viewpoints. So I look forward to participating in the club. I've seen a lot of history throughout my years as a Rotarian. Took a little respite, but I'm back, and I'm glad to be back. So thank you.
And we're grateful to have you back, Jim. Thank you very much. Our next guest is Karen Thompson. Karen, please introduce yourself. You may be on mute, Karen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Karen Thompson. I'm with the Maywood Proviso Rotary Club. I'm a past president. I'm glad I was here. I missed quite a bit of it due to work, but I was able to catch in on the last portion of it. And he was indeed a very inspiring speaker. And I enjoyed I liked what he had to say. I'm also an HBCU graduate. And I've been with Rotary since about 2012. And I find it I enjoy my membership with Rotary. I enjoy interacting. I enjoy the networking and meeting everybody who cares about improving our community and the world as a whole.
Well, it was great to have you on today, Karen. Thank you very much for being here. Our next guest is Kenneth Pearson. Kenneth, you may be on mute if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Kenneth. I am excited. This is fantastic. I'm a guest of Dr. Michelle Stewart. She's president of the Institute for Clinical Social Work, and I work at the Institute, also a graduate of an HBCU, Lane College, and I'm very happy to be a part today. Words of wisdom were fantastic. Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you, and you're always welcome anytime. Our next guest is Kwame Bandele. Could you please introduce yourself? Kwame, you may be on mute. Well, we may need to come back to Kwame. Linda Gerber.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Gerber, and I'm president-elect at the Evanston Lighthouse Rotary Club. And I'm so pleased to be here. And I think that being able to drop in on your meetings is one of the best things about being a Rotarian. Thank you very much, Dr. Franklin. This was an extraordinary afternoon. I'm very humbled to be here in the same room.
Well, thank you very much, Linda. Thanks for joining. Always great to have our fellow Rotarians from Evanston on the call. And I'm going to take your quote and put it on our website. That's a great endorsement right there. So glad to have you. Let's see who else we have on our guest list today. A lot of Rotarians on with us today as well, which is fantastic. Ronnie from Sydney, please introduce yourself to the group.
Ronnie Corn from Rotary Club of Sydney. I'm a retired customs officer, and I serve our club via our Service Awards Committee and also on our Peacekeeping Committee.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us. And as I mentioned before we started the program today, hopefully you can join next week as well, since the topic will be all about Sydney. So that would be perfect. Our next guest today is Takesha Buford. Takesha, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, you may hear my background noise. I'm in a shared space, but my name is Takesha Buford. I am new to the Rotary family. I'm a member of the Maywood Proviso Club, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Dr. Franklin, you were remarkable. I took down tons of notes. And again, I'm just so happy to be a part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Takesha, and welcome to the Rotary community. And again, through the magic of Zoom, you're welcome to be a guest at our meetings anytime you like. So have I missed any guests with us today? Anybody who did not get a chance to introduce themselves? I know a few folks maybe had stepped away or were on mute. Anybody who didn't get to introduce themselves? All right. Well,
Eric?
Eric? Oh, yes. Yes.
I'm so sorry. This is AG Talay Thompson again.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted Dr. Franklin to know that Mr. Corey Hardeman, he's the former president of the Chicago Morehouse Alumni Association. He had to step away, Dr. Franklin, but he was here on the call today and just said that he thoroughly enjoyed today's program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Talay, and thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I did see that pop up in the chat window, so thanks for sharing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Again, I want to thank all of our guests for being with us here today. I know there were a few other guests that were here during the program as well and had dropped off. So this is fantastic, and certainly hope to see many of you in the future at some of our future programs as well. We have a couple of announcements here today to run through. So first of all, we often get greetings from various Rotary clubs around the world. We recently received a greeting from the Rotary Club of Haifa, Israel. It happens to be the only Arabic-speaking Rotary Club in Haifa, and they were delighted to inform us that during their club meeting on the 14th of January, they dedicated their international greeting to the Rotary Club of Chicago. And in that greeting, they emphasized all of the great service work that we do here at the club. So I wanted to pass that on to all of our members here today. There's also a volunteer opportunity I wanted to share with folks, and this was brought to my attention because last week, one of our members, Pancho Nunez, mentioned, is there anything that the Rotary Club of Chicago can do to help facilitate and sort of speed up the vaccination process here in Chicago? And so our past district governor and future RI director, Pat Merriweather, shared the fact that the Jesse Brown VA Medical Center is looking for volunteers to help veterans get vaccinated. And volunteers can do things as simple as meeting and greeting the veterans, shepherding them around the hospital, wiping chairs, and a variety of other things. So information on how you can sign up to help with that volunteer work is in the newsletter, in the Gyrator. Other volunteer opportunities. This one is always an important one. Alita, if you're still on, would you like to tell our members how they can support Job One with jobs?
Hello, everyone again. So our signature project for Rotary One is the Job One program, and it is going to be up and running this week with the application to students. And with that, we need jobs for our students. So we are now looking for employers to hire our students or to sponsor a student to go to a nonprofit if your place can't take a high school student. So please feel free to reach out to us to help us educate the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alita. This is a program that we've now been doing for, I believe it was 17 years. And we give job skills training to Chicago high school students. We give them interview practice, how to put together a resume, how you work in an office environment. So we have screened the students, we've trained the students. These are folks that will add real value to your organization, to your company. I would also like to point out that despite the pandemic, we still had a successful year last year with our Job One program and still placed the students into internships across the city of Chicago. And so we want to make sure to do it bigger and better this year. Thank you, Alita. Speaking of our great programs and how we pay for our great programs, Marga, would you like to give an update on the annual campaign?
Well, The numbers, hello, everybody. I am Marga Huco. This year, I am chairing our annual fund campaign. And as you can see in the chart, the color pink looks very big. Well, it's not a happy color because that's the funds we need to reach our goals. So yellow is so far the contributions that have been made to the Rotary International Foundation, and the blue is the contributions to the Rotary One Foundation. Both foundations are very important because they enable us to do the work we do both locally and worldwide. But let me thank all of you who have already contributed. And I would like also pledged. We have several of you. We have many more that have not donated yet. And you have time to make a pledge or to donate now if it works better for you. Our deadline is June 30th. So please feel free to reach out or go to the gyrator or our website, and you are going to find a button to click to donate. It's very easy, very straightforward. And what can I say? Help us reach our goal. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Marga, and thanks for the great work you're doing with the annual campaign. I'd also like to point out another very easy way to support the Rotary One Foundation financially with doing really no extra work is to use Amazon Smile. Basically, you can do all the same things that you do on Amazon already and make all the same purchases, but you just log in via Amazon Smile. And then you can search for the Rotary One Foundation, select that as your charity, and then boom, funds automatically stream into the Rotary One Foundation for every purchase you make, every video, Prime Video that you watch and pay for. 5.5% of that purchase will come to the Rotary Club of Chicago without you having to do anything or pay anything additional. Super easy. That information is also in the gyrator. It's in the gyrator every week, so you can find it in any one of those newsletters. There are some, as always, some interesting meetings coming up. Rotary, being such a large organization, offers so many opportunities to learn, to meet other people, and so forth. There are things always going on, not only with our club, but with other clubs. You've heard from a lot of Rotarians in the Chicago area here who have great meetings going on every week. There's stuff going on at the Rotary International level, at the district level. Districts, you may or may not know, then roll up into zones, which roll up into regions, and even they have great events going on. And the region in which we happen to reside here in Chicago, Region 36, is also hosting some interesting webinars over the course of the coming weeks. This Thursday, January 21st at 7 p.m., there's a webinar focusing on Rotary International's strategic plan and how it can be used to make an impact at the club and district levels. All of our members should know by now that our club has its own strategic plan, which does align with Rotary International's plan as well. So that link is in the gyrator. It's also shown in the chat box here today if you want to sign up for that. And there's going to be more of those meetings coming out every week, and we'll make sure to announce those every week. As always, the way to get involved with our club and to see sort of how decisions are made is to attend one of our committee meetings. Everyone is welcome to attend those meetings. We have a PR and marketing committee meeting on Thursday, January 21st, our board meeting on February 2nd, community service committee meeting on February 4th, and an international service committee meeting on February 11th. In terms of our upcoming club meetings, as you've heard me mention a few times, next week is a special meeting where we focus on our sister city relationships. You may remember we had our first in the Sister Cities series with the mayor of Vilnius, Lithuania, back in September. And now our second one is with Sydney. Sydney happens to be the newest sister city for the city of Chicago. In order to accommodate the massive time difference that will be an evening meeting. So if you show up at 12:10, it will be a very lonely meeting for you. So please make sure you note the time and come at 5:30 in the evening to accommodate our friends in Australia. February 2nd, we have a Rotary After Work event with the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center. I think it will be a very interesting and a very useful meeting because the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center works with departments here in the city of Chicago, the police department, other organizations on helping to identify children who are being abused and help get them the help that they need. And what some of the things they'll be talking about is how you can spot those types of signs of abuse and help children in the community. So this is not just a presentation, but it is educational, and it is in some sense a public service announcement for our Rotarians. We have many folks here today from around the world, but Ronnie, since you're an international Rotarian, and I think you're still on with us today, we usually like to have one of our international Rotarians read the four-way test. The four-way test is currently being shown on the screen here. Ronnie from Sydney, would you be able to read for us the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do?
Okay, I'm just moving my smartphone around. Just bear with me one moment.
Sure.
The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do first. Is it true? Secondly, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Thanks for reading that. Thanks for being here with us today. Thank you to everybody who joined, and certainly to our speaker, Dr. Franklin. With that, meeting adjourned. I'm so glad that everybody could join us here today. I was really pleased by all the guests that we had. And again, for those who are not Rotarians, please come back and visit us again, and maybe we'll get you signed up as a Rotarian one of these days.
Yeah, great meeting, Eric. Very timely.
Oh, thank you very much, Marshall.
Great meeting, Eric.
Thanks, Wayman. Hey, good to see you, Wayman.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Eric. It's just what we needed to hear, especially today.
Yeah, I thought so as well.
Yeah.
Couldn't have had a better speaker this week than
I
Dr.
know.
Franklin.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Eric. Thank you for sending the message. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Pancho. Thank you. Take care, Marga.
Good morning, Eric. Bye.
Thanks, Natalie. Good to see you.
Great meeting. For people who aren't Rotarians, don't leave it too long, considering it's one of the best things you can do in your life.
I certainly agree with that. Certainly agree with that. Thank you, Ronnie, for joining us today.
That's okay. Enjoy your week and see you next week.
Sounds good. See you then. All right. Well, I think we'll sign off here. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
Take care, Eric.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, guys.